Welcome to Little Miss Leadfoot. My name is Melissa, and we have a very special guest. This is Doug Wilson, aka my dad. My dad is my number one supporter when it comes to my dreams, my dreams, and he's just always been there for me. And I wanted to make an effort to share with the world his story, because there's no question about it. He's got a lead foot, and I just want to dive deep into his story and his experiences. So the first question I have for you is, what was the moment that you developed this passion for cars?
Well, I was into cars all my life. My first love was cars. I was into cars when I was a little kid, a little boy, and I was into hot rods and drag racing. I was a big drag racing fan growing up, and I helped my father work on cars, so I've been around cars all my life. The most formative experience I had in cars was when my father brought home a '67 GTX Hemi car that he had bought to resell, and it had a bad valve, and I helped him take the head off and lap the valve. I learned how to lap valves and stuff, and put the head back on the car, and then he took me for a ride in it, and it was amazing. It was just mind-blowing how fast it was. So yeah, that was the most fun. And then after that, I was chasing Hemi cars all my life.
That's kind of my story too. My first car, really, or hot rod, I experienced was your '69 Hemi Charger. I was in the back seat in my little car seat.
Yeah, doing burnouts.
Doing burnouts.
Do another burnout, Daddy.
Coming out of car shows sideways. That was my first experience, and I never looked back. And obviously, I don't know as much as you do. You have an insane amount of knowledge that I would dream of having one day about cars and having to work on them. So, how did you get into wanting to work on cars and the knowledge of the ins and outs of cars and the mechanics of it?
Obviously, it began with helping my father, right? And it grew out of that. And as I got cars and acquired cars and started the business parting out cars and selling cars, obviously the knowledge that is required for that to function properly, you acquire. It's experience, mostly. Experience and turning wrenches and getting your hands dirty and working and going to junkyards, selling parts, building engines, tearing them apart. It was all, I never had any formal training. It was all life experience.
So, what was the first build you ever completed on your own?
My '71 Charger was the six-pack car. I restored that in 1982. I bought the car in '81. It was a wreck. It was a mess. Even though it was 10 years old, it had been abused like so many other muscle cars. And that was really my first one. I was waiting for a Hemi car, and the best I could do was a 446 car. So, I was a day late and a dollar short on every Hemi car I ever chased up until the '69 Charger, and I had to wait 10 years to buy that.
So with the '71, how did you come about that car and the history of it?
I was selling parts at Englishtown, and a gentleman came up to us and asked us if we were interested in purchasing the car. His wife wanted it out of the backyard, and we made a deal. And I went and picked it up. And then from there, I found out what the car was.
Right. The value of it.
Not the value of it, but the history of it, and the uniqueness of it. It was obvious that it was sold out of Grant Spalding Dodge because it had the Grant Spalding Dodge decals on it. And I was able to acquire the paperwork for it. So I have all the paperwork tracing its lineage back to Grant Spalding Dodge. So it's a rare car, and it came from a notable dealer.
Right.
So obviously the car was worth saving.
So you were going to you bought that car in an effort to part it out
Originally, we were going to part it out, but I didn't realize what it was until we bought it.
until you bought it.
Right, because it had a grabber hood on it. It had
Right.
a spoiler, front spoiler, rear spoiler, and good body parts. So we were looking at it for parts. I actually
So-
wanted the air grabber hood for my '73 Charger that I had at the time.
So parting out cars and going to flea markets, that's what supplied your love for
That's
the
what
cars.
supported my endeavors in terms of buying hot rods and building hot rods. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
You don't
'cause
really see too many flea markets nowadays, though, like you did when you were younger, have you?
some of them have gone away, but there's still, you got Chrysler's at Carlisle, which is huge. It
Oh,
takes
that's
2
always,
days
yeah.
to walk that. But the problem is then parts availability is drying up on a lot of this stuff, right? And the repop market is filling some of that need, but the interest in first generation muscle cars has waned quite a bit because of the expense of them and the availability of them and the availability of parts. So young guys are now working on, the muscle car era -2, which is, your modern Challengers. The Hemis, they've made so many Hemis engines now, third generation Hemis, they're as plentiful as 318s were back in my day.
Right.
So you can go to any junkyard, pull a Hemi out, and you got a good basis for a hot rod. The electronics nowadays is far exceeded what anything that we had back in the day. So it requires a different technology mindset, today's cars, versus restoring the muscle cars or the original first muscle cars. Original first muscle cars were devoid of any real electronics, any emission controls, any myriad of the vacuum lines that you see on cars nowadays. All of that stuff requires specialized knowledge, not general knowledge. Like when I was restoring cars, you could pull a lawnmower apart and get enough information out of that in order to work on a car. Right?
Yeah.
If you were able to pull a lawnmower apart, put it back together again, and get it working, you're able to work on a car and get it working.
Yeah.
Now that's not the case
It's
nowadays.
more complicated.
Right. It's way more complicated.
Tell me about your '69, because that was the car I grew up in and I grew to know. How did you find that car? I mean, I know the '69 was, well, the Hemi car, and just a Hemi car in general, was your dream car.
Well,
And you've
I've
been
been
searching for that.
I've been
so.
chasing Hemi cars for a long time. Always was a day late and a dollar short. And I put a lot of time into searching for Hemi cars. And my buddy had purchased one from somebody, and it was a '69 Charger 4-speed car, a super track pack car. But it was wasted, like so many of them. The body was rusted, the roof was rusted. Didn't have a lot of body panels left on it. The car was pretty much stripped, other than some of the specialty Hemi stuff. It came with a brake booster. It came with the dashboard and the VIN numbers and all the rest of that stuff in the broadcast. So I was lucky enough to get that stuff. But fenders were gone. The complete front clip was gone. A lot of other stuff was gone. I did come with a Dana. So I had been bugging him for about 10 years to buy the car, and finally he had gotten himself into a better financial pinch, and so I was able to leverage that and to buy the car from him. And then after that, it took me about 10 years to find all the parts and to restore the car, and I finished it just about the time you were born. Slightly before you were born, I finished that car.
You built that car in our driveway.
In
right?
our driveway.
Our rutted out driveway.
I rutted out
Where
driveway.
we're building the
On
dragster.
jack stands.
Wow.
Yep. I brought it over to a friend's house and sandblasted, put it on a rotisserie and sandblasted the underneath, and then painted the underneath myself. And then
That was
got
your
it over to the
baby.
body shop. It was my baby. It's still a wonderful car.
Yeah.
I may not own it anymore, but it's out there, and it was a pretty car.
Funny.
I was in the Marine Corps at the time, and we would go out to Arizona for maneuvers, and we'd spend weeks at a time. And I was fortunate enough to be aircrew on a C-130, so I had a rental car, and that allowed me to go to different junkyards in Arizona, Southern California, looking for parts, shagging parts. And I found a whole car, 69 Charger in a junkyard that had a mint roof on it. It was a hardtop car, didn't have a vinyl roof on it, so the roof was mint. So I needed the roof for the car. So I bought the car, and instead of just taking the roof off it, I decided that since the quarters were in such good shape and the engine compartment was in such good shape, that I was going to quarter the car up and bring the whole car home in the back of a C-130.
Hit two birds with one stone.
And that's what I did. I quartered the car up. They borrowed a torch at the junkyard, and he charged me $50, I think, to use it.
Wow.
And I took a day off, and I went and I spent the day cutting it up in the junkyard and stuffing it in the back of a van, and then storing it on base until we were ready to leave, and then I stuffed it in the back of a C-130.
So you just went a little bit of car shopping while you were...
I went car shopping wherever I went.
The 69, I mean, I grew up in that car, like I said before. It made it to Pink's All Outs.
Yeah, I did Pink's All Out with that car. Yeah.
So explain that experience. I remember being there when I was, how old was I?
6 or 7 or 8, something like that.
I think that was my first time ever at a drag race.
It was.
Too.
That was a transitionary period in my life in terms of the car hobby. I was pretty much sick of doing car shows. Seeing the same cars, seeing the same people, talking about the same stuff, and then, you got your people that like to pick your car apart. Oh, it's the wrong bolt for the alternator, that kind of crap. And it was like, where's your Hemi car? Oh, you don't have one? Too bad. I wanted to get into racing at the time, and I bought a 65 Plymouth just for that, to relive what I originally wanted to do when I was 17, which was to take a 65 Plymouth and go race it. Right. So I bought a 65 Plymouth at the time, and I was going to gut that and race it. And I started running the Hemi car on the track, getting times and trying to improve upon the time. Now, being a 4-speed car, it's not a very good bracket car. No, but it was fun, taking it to the track.
I'm sure it was fun going through all the gears.
Going through the gears, and I was loving life.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Loving life, right? And then John and his son Nick were racing juniors. And so he introduced me to junior dragsters. I had no knowledge of it before, he got into junior dragsters, and I thought that might be a good way to share the hobby with you and also go race. Except I wouldn't be driving, you'd be driving. So I got to pay for it, and you got all the fun.
It's funny because I was scared to get into a junior dragster.
You would not get in that car.
I refuse.
You would not get in a car.
I refuse to get into it.
And then one day you finally got in it.
I did
and
it.
Did a couple of burnouts, and that was it.
Yep. A couple of burnouts up the street.
Yeah. With Nikki, spurring you on.
Yep.
Yeah. And that was it. You were off like a little duck.
We loved doing that together. I miss juniors. I do.
Juniors was a good time.
It was fun. I mean, I think I most miss being on the track. Yeah. I think that's
I miss the people.
I miss the people too. The junior community is just,
no,
it's undescribable. You have to be a part of it to really know what it feels like. Everyone's there for you. You're a family. Like, you're competitors, but yet you're a family. Like, everyone's willing to help you out.
You're best friends until you line up at the tree.
In the lines. You're best friends until...
You're best friends until you're on the line.
Yep, that is true.
When you stage that car, that's it.
That's it.
All bets are off.
All bets are off, yep. What was your favorite junior race?
Well, I have a lot of favorite junior races, but the one that sticks in my mind most is the one that earned you your nickname.
That is a good story.
Yeah. So.
You want to tell it?
Yeah. So it was your first year of real racing.
Yeah.
Your junior year of racing.
I was about, 10, 11?
You were 11, I think. Yeah. And you had talked me into letting you go to the Eastern Conference Finals.
I was very persuasive.
Yes, you were. And John agreed to take you and your dragster along with Nick down and supervise you until I got down there on the weekend because I had to work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you had been pretty much doing everything on your car.
Fun fact,
Right.
I had no idea what I was doing. I don't know if like even if John like told you, I was taking weight out on my own. I was trying to figure out the whole weight situation.
Right.
I was taking weight out on my own, putting weight in on my own. John let me do whatever I wanted to the car.
Right.
And like figure out like how to dial it. And I think that was a really good experience for me because without you there,
Yeah.
just so I could take the reins and figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
You know, without you doing all the hard work for me.
Right.
So that was a good experience, I think,
Yeah,
for my
so-
junior career.
Well, you had been doing really good racing all week. When I got down there, you know, you were cleaning up pretty much. I mean, you didn't win any races, but you
I went
were going
pretty far,
rounds.
yeah.
You were going rounds. And so the big day come, and, you know, I was there. We had the car dialed. The car was on a dial. You were on a tree all day, just knocking them down. And you won the race that got you into the quarterfinals, and the engine quit on the way back
I
to
remember that.
the.
I had to coast off the track.
You had to coast off the track.
Yeah, it completely shut off.
Right. So we went to the weight area where you had to weigh the dragster and do all the NHRA crap. And he told me, oh, the car shut down on the track, and that you had to coast in. And I said, well, we'll go back to the pits and we'll see what's going on. Right? We can't work on it here. Let's go back to the pits. Well, we tried to start the engine in the pits, and it wouldn't start.
Nope.
It was sputtering and spitting back and all kinds of stuff. And as we started troubleshooting it, it became apparent that you broke a valve. And breaking a valve in a flathead, for those of you that don't know, is not totally catastrophic, but the engine is not going to run. You need to replace the valve. So we were kind of screwed. I didn't have a valve. Nobody had a valve, and you were being called to the lanes. Car 1702, where are you? So it just so happened that Nicky was there with one of his friends who had you were in an 890 class, okay? One of his friends, his father had a motor that he was selling. It was a 790 motor. It was the same motor, but it was for 790s.
Yeah, it was a medium motor. Right.
So switching everything over was not a big deal because everything would fit. And we asked him if we could borrow the motor, and he said yes. So we then set about to thrashing on your car to do an engine change in the middle of all this. Now, you used to get upset when I changed the jetting on your carburetor. You were apoplectic as we were ripping the motor off your dragster and putting a 790 motor on it. You were just beyond upset.
I didn't know what was happening. I remember Nick telling Brittany, like, get her out of here. So I didn't know what was happening.
Because you were stressed out. Well, yeah, so you were stressed out, and we had one group of guys taking the motor off. We had another group of guys taking stuff off of that motor. We had another group of guys stripping the other motor and taking the stuff off the one motor and putting it on the other motor. And then, so we had 3 crews working. We had, I don't know, 5 rows deep watching us do this.
In the pits.
In the pits. And in the meantime, they're waiting on us to race. So we got the engine changed in about 20 minutes from start to finish.
It looked like a real Top Fuel pit crew in there.
We were busting our butts. We got the thing fired. Once we got the thing fired, we said, let's go. And so we marched our little butts up the hill, and it looked like a scene out of Rocky, with all these guys walking up with, green T-shirts on and grease all over the place. And so when we got to the hill, the person that we were racing, his father came over and he said, what are you dialing? And like 5 people all said 890 all at the same time. And what did we tell you? Get a wheel on him and drag him down the track. That's what we told you, right? Get a wheel on him. Don't, because you were freaking out. Oh, what am I going to run? Da, 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 da. Don't worry about the dial. Get a wheel on him, drag him down the track.
For those who don't know, bracket racing, at this time I was in the 890 index. So I couldn't go faster than 890 or what you dial. So I was dialing an 890. If I went faster than 890, I would have broken out and I would have been
lost.
I would have lost.
But you're also limited to what?
You're also limited to a certain amount of time. So,
So if you
870, I think, was the NHRA limit for the
think-
890 class.
so if you went faster than 870, what happened?
You got DQ'd.
You got DQ'd, thrown off the track, basically. Right?
Yeah, yep. So,
So what happened? So we got you in the dragster. We got you strapped in. We told you, remember, get a wheel on the guy, drag him down the track, right? So we get you up to the line, we get you started, and it's at night, and the lights are on, and the motor's just smoking. It's just not smoking out the tailpipe, but the whole engine and everything's smoking from all the grease and the getting hot and stuff. And so you're sitting there in a burnout box and surrounded by a cloud of smoke. And the engine sounded ratty. It sounded like a Hemi on steroids. It just was amazingly throaty, right? It just had a different sound. You remember that?
yeah, I do.
So there you are. You do the burnout, and man, that thing come alive when you stab that pedal, right? So you did the burnout. We get you back up. We get you staged. You bump in the stage. He bumps in the stage. The tree comes down. You cut an 024 light. He went red. So why don't you fill us in on what happened next?
So, when someone goes red, the other person wins because when you go red, you lose
You foul.
automatically.
It's a
Right.
foul.
Yeah. So,
So you won the race at that point.
yeah, I won the race.
Hands down. You
I
could
won
have
the
gotten out of the
race.
car and pushed it down the track, and you still would have won that race, right?
Yes, I won that race. So, in my little beginner racing brain, I was taught that if someone goes red, you run it out so that you can see what you're running, what your dial is, so you can dial for the next round. And this was the quarterfinals, so we had 2 more rounds to go after this. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to run it out. Since he went red, I'm running it out because we don't know what it dialed. My motor blew, remember? We don't know what it's going to dial. We need to know the dial for the next 2 rounds.
You ran it out already.
So I ran it out, and I ended up running what? An
8:45.
8:45. I had an inkling that I went a little too fast.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. When I saw the scoreboard, I was like, oh, that was very fast. So I remember getting off the track, and I remember Nick meeting me at the pits and to pick me up and stuff. And I just saw his face. Like, he knew that I did something that I wasn't supposed to.
Well,
but
when that tree came down and he went red, the entire place was watching that race.
yeah, there was a big crowd.
The stands were full, right? And when that guy went red and you were green, the whole place erupted.
Oh yeah, everyone went crazy.
Everybody went crazy, cheering you on. And then
Except for Hemi John.
John's like, lift, lift, lift.
That's funny.
Yeah, lift, lift. So.
And then, so lo and behold, an NHRA official decided they wanted to come talk to me and told me I was disqualified for going too fast. So, and then at that moment,
At the moment that you didn't lift
Yeah.
and you went through the scoreboard because you were still on the track,
yeah.
the first words out of my mouth were "Little Miss Leadfoot."
So that is how I acquired the name.
Little Miss Leadfoot, and you've been known as Little Miss Leadfoot ever since, haven't you?
Yep, I have. So that was your favorite
That's
junior, one of your favorite junior stories. Because part of your life experience is racing with me. And,
Yes.
I mean, I have my faults, and we have argued on the track, for
Well,
sure.
we've had some epic battles. In
Oh,
the pits.
yes. But, I mean, I couldn't be more grateful of having the experiences I've had with you with racing. I mean, I've learned so much. One thing that sticks with me when you were teaching me, around the track and stuff, is the saying that you always say is, do the car the tree. That's always stuck with me because it's so true. I mean, yeah, you're competing against someone else, but you always say you're competing against the clock.
You are. In bracket racing,
It's down
against the
to
clock.
the millisecond.
I've seen you do some pretty phenomenal things, so definitely have a talent.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. It's my happy place for sure.
Yeah.
That's why I can't wait to build this dragster. We can.
Yeah. You learned a lot building the dragster too, didn't you?
I have learned a lot building the dragster. I mean, building a car from a roller to a race car is probably one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do in my life.
It's not easy, is it?
It's not easy. And I think a lot of people forget that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people forget that money, time, parts all go into it.
That's right.
And
But
it gets ignored a lot.
But the most important thing about building a car is it's your car.
It is my car. I'm building my first race car.
You are.
With your help, of
With
course.
my help.
But I'm learning as much as I can from you. So well, there you have it. That is Doug Wilson, my dad. One interview with him just doesn't do his story justice, and there's just so much more to know about him, what he's been through, cars and building cars, his knowledge. But I'm lucky enough to be able to have a first row seat into his brain, literally. And this is why I wanted to do an interview with him, because I wanted to share to the world how he came up in cars and where his knowledge came from and how he got me into racing and how my passion grew from that, because his story is also mine, and that's why I wanted to do first Little Miss Leadfoot interview with you, because you deserve it, and I would have regretted it if I wasn't able to have this interview with you, and it's going to be out there forever, so.
Well, I was blessed with a very talented daughter.
Thanks, Dad.
And the world is your oyster.
Thank you. I'm trying. But stay tuned for more interviews to come. Check out littlemissleadfoot.com for more updates. My features will be up there if you want to take a look. And yeah, that's about it. So I don't know how to close this out.
See you in the lanes.
Okay. All right. Cut.